Shades of Silence 1. The beginning of silence. Alexei and Marina had been married for 8 years. He was an engineer in a large construction company, she was a literature teacher at a high school. Their life seemed measured from the outside, a dacha, trips to their parents, dinners together on Fridays. But behind this external harmony, emptiness was slowly maturing. Alexei often stayed late at work, got tired, and became silent. Marina tried to talk, asking, "Do you still love me?" But he only nodded, not taking his eyes off the news on his phone. Over time, she stopped asking. And began to be silent along with him. 2. Literature lesson. Ilya appeared in Marina's life as an invited guest, a young writer, 34 years old, slightly careless, with thick curly hair and the look of a man who always sees more than he says. He was invited to the high school to meet with the students. He read Tsvetaeva's poems as if he felt her pain. And when Marina praised his reading style, he simply said, "You hide behind words, too." This phrase pierced her. No one had spoken to her like that in recent years. 3. Signs and pauses. At first there were messages, short, witty, almost innocent. Then, coffee after school, walks. He told her about his books, about love, about women who left him. She listened and felt alive. She knew that she was already balancing on the edge, but she could not stop. And then one day, when Alexei went on another business trip, Ilya stayed with her. Everything was unexpectedly simple, a bottle of wine, a touch of the hand, a kiss. Then a night, without explanations and promises. 4. Consequences. Marina thought that it would be a one-time thing. That she would cope. But it happened again. Then again. Ilya had what Alex lacked, fire, attention, passion. But there was also what Ilya lacked, reliability, calm, real depth. Alexei began to notice. He did not ask direct questions, but something new appeared in his gaze, suspicion. One day he said, "You have become different. You are somewhere far away. Am I losing you?" She wanted to tell everything. Not out of shame, out of fatigue. But she remained silent. She herself no longer knew who she loved and whether she loved anyone at all. 5. The end. In the spring, she told Ilya that it was all over. Although he pretended to be surprised, he was not truly upset. Deep down, Marina understood she was an inspiration for him, but not destiny. And she was never able to talk to Alexei. One day, he simply packed his suitcase and went to the dacha. Left a note, "I knew. I felt. I don't blame. We just lost each other too long ago to blame anyone." Marina was left alone. In the apartment that smelled of his coffee and where his slippers stood. She looked at herself in the mirror and for the first time in a long time, she realized, now her life is not a choice between two men. It is a choice between the past and the truth. 6. After the first weeks after Alexei left were strange. Not painful, as she expected, but deafeningly quiet. This silence did not oppress, it cleansed. For the first time in a long time, Marina felt herself in the present. No one was waiting for her, she did not lie to anyone. All that was left was herself. She went to school, explained Pasternak to the children, led a literary analysis group, signed up for art therapy courses. Surprisingly, it was the teenagers who became something like salvation for her. They felt the truth, and she tried not to play in front of them. 7. Letter. One spring, she sat down at the table and wrote Alexei a letter. Not to get him back, not with pleas for forgiveness, just to say everything that she had not had time to. She wrote, "You were my family, my shore, and I destroyed it. But we both lost ourselves long before the betrayal. I betrayed us not when I let Ilya into the house, but when I stopped fighting for us. Forgive me if you can. But most importantly, understand, I'm trying to become myself again." There was no answer. But this letter became a liberation for her. 8. A new look. 6 months passed. Autumn fell on the city again. Marina changed her hairstyle, took off her wedding ring, moved to a small apartment in another area. She was no longer looking for a relationship. She read, studied, sometimes rode alone on the train to unfamiliar suburbs, just to breathe. Sometimes she remembered Ilya not with longing, but as one remembers a book that was read at night in youth, exciting, but too superficial. He wrote to her a couple of times, invited her to an exhibition, but she did not go. She already knew that fire is not always warm. Sometimes it just burns. 9. Return in December, Alexei called. Not for the stage, not for drama. Just to ask how she was. They met in a cafe on Arbat, talked quietly. He had noticeably turned grey, lost weight. She had changed, she no longer looked confused. It was obvious, two adults who had lived through someone else's and their own lies. Do you regret it? He asked. No, Marina said. I have changed. And maybe that's exactly what we needed. For both of us. They didn't see each other anymore. But they both felt the story had ended correctly. 10. Light. Almost 2 years had passed. Marina now ran a literary blog, she had several students in private lessons. She lived alone, but she was not lonely. She no longer sought love as salvation. She was learning to be whole. Sometimes, walking along the embankment, she remembered those times not with pain, but with gratitude. For everything. Even for the mistake. Because it was she who gave Marina herself back. Epilogue. At the crossing of lines 1. Alexei. After leaving home, Alexei really did go to the dacha. He stayed there all summer, alone, without the internet, almost without communication. For the first time in many years, he began to hear himself. Not his boss, not his wife, not his colleagues, himself. Every day he got up early, chopped wood, read books that were gathering dust in the pantry, listened to the hedgehog scratching at the porch at night. Simple, rough silence healed better than any words. In the fall, he returned to the city, rented a small apartment, changed departments in the company and began teaching at a technical college, not for the money, but to feel that he was useful to someone. And gradually he began to thaw. His life became different, not ideal, but real. Sometimes he remembered Marina. Not with pain. With sadness. Like people remember the first song they heard on an old tape recorder. He knew that if they had started talking then, maybe everything would have been different. But then, and now, they were two different people. Too different. 2. The meeting. 3 years had passed. In November, cold and damp, Marina was hurrying through the metro, holding a thin folder with a manuscript in her hands, one of her first stories. She did not notice him at once. He was standing by the coffee vending machines in a coat and with a new scarf, aged, with noticeable wrinkles around his eyes. He saw her first. And smiled. You're late, as always, he said, as if not a day had passed. She stopped. Looked into his eyes. And smiled too. And you're still the same. With coffee and irony. They did not hug. They did not rush to each other. They just stood. In a pause in which there was everything, pain, memory, and warmth. Are you okay? He asked. Right now, yes. And you? That's good too. Just different. They talked for a couple more minutes. Then she left. She had a meeting with the publisher. He stayed. And as soon as she disappeared around the corner, he looked after her a little longer than necessary. 3. The last thought neither he nor she wrote to each other after that meeting. They did not exchange phone numbers. And yet, both left with ease. They did not get back together, but at that moment, in the underground passage, amid the bustle of the city, the two lines of their lives crossed again. And both moved on, no longer parallel, not together, but each, confidently and in its own way brightly.